Okay, it is 4:17 p.m. We have exited executive session and no actions were taken in executive session.
And I'd like to tender maybe a couple motions about some next steps we can take, either on either scenario, whether it be BEAD is success or whether it is not successful. I think the first motion I'd make is that we complete we'll see how. I think there's going to be a lot of these. There's going to be a matrix. I don't know how to do it. I think what I want to find out is, do we just do construction documents and go out to bid only for Middlebury, and then we negotiate our way through any challenges that we might encounter with Ripton, and that would just be for the construction, which would be engaging a contractor to do that work. So those are the first two options. Go whole hog and put out to bid for both builds, and which is only, it doesn't cost us anything for that. So maybe we'll say that the first motion would be put out to bid for construction of both hubs, both the Middlebury and Ripton, with no cost on the part of Maple Broadband, since all we're doing is asking for quotes. I move that we do that now and defer a decision on what we actually want to build until later. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. I don't know if I did real well with that. I guess the idea is keep going, Steve, until you've done everything you can do without spending a nickel.
Yep.
Yeah, and so that's the easy one, I think. So maybe I don't even need to ask the question. How's that sound to you? Do you think that's okay? We can have a formal vote, I guess, later, but
it makes sense. I mean, all the information and ammunition that we have in our arsenal before we spend money is terrific.
Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. And then I think what we might want to do on this other stuff is I'm not necessarily tendering a motion here, but I just want to test the waters here, is that there could be lead time challenges with some of the materials that need to be purchased. And there's also an impact associated with materials that are needed to complete construction. And like I just took a look at the hub for Middlebury. It says the lead time for the hub itself, as of we did this a long time ago. I got this quote in June of last year, so it could be farther out. But right when reading this, it's 8 to 12 weeks after receipt of order, and then it says it's valid for 14 days. So this is not a good number, but basically there could be, depending on what happens with BEAD, the pricing could be volatile and lead times could get seriously out of whack. And so, first of all, I think that if we make a decision, which we're not making today, to build out one or both of those hubs, we have to do that fast. And so I think we certainly don't need to make a decision on this now, but I think it wouldn't hurt for me to solicit prices for everything, and then work with Ellie on next steps, and then we'll pull you in if and when it's appropriate. I think that's my only worry is if we decide if we're really, really gung-ho about putting a new hub in, there's a lot we don't control, most of it's lead times. So I think if we're going to do it and we're serious about it, we're probably going to need to make a decision pretty quickly. But I guess we can stop me at that. So I guess after thinking this through, I guess my opinion is I'll shortly, when I have spare time after I do the design work, I'll reach out to you folks and we'll talk about it again. Maybe I'll get quotes for some of this gear to see what the lead times look like, and that might help us make some decisions. So, Yes,
Steve,
go.
one small point. I think it's probably easiest when you're getting the quotes to make sure that you don't just put made in America, but say it needs to be compliant with the BEAD program, and then ask for an additional quote for non-compliant material if different, so that we have all the information. We don't have to go out again.
Yeah, when I've been talking with Clearfield, the cabinet manufacturer, they give me two quotes, one BABA compliant and one not. So, that's covered.
Yeah, just make sure it's because BEAD might have other requirements that aren't simply BABA. So just make sure it says BABA compliant, for intended use in the BEAD, just to make sure we've covered all our bases. Make
Yeah.
them do any additional homework. I'm sure they know the ins and outs of this stuff better than we do.
Yeah, the two quotes for the Ripton hub, the delta between the BABA and non-BABA was like less than $100. But
Yep.
for what it's worth. But yep, okay, you and I can. When I get to that point, Ellie, you and I'll have a chat just to make sure I cover all the contingencies there.
Great.
Okay, so I've got to go on the one, and I guess we're going to stop there. When the time comes for us to start making some spending decisions, we'll pull you folks in again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
But thank you, Steve, for always like thinking 6 more miles down the road than sometimes the rest of us do.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, this is tactical. The strategic stuff I think is really going to want to work on is going to be part and parcel of the finance committee, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. So moving on to section 7, I realized actually that 7A we don't need to talk about because we've already discussed and approved it over email. But just to give everyone the update, I approved invoices today and sent those off to Darlene, so this was in there. So that's been done. Thank you for that. It will make our administrative life much easier. Small changes that make life easier, I'm all for them. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is aerial promotion. So maybe as a background to this, as you all know, working with London Middlebury on our marketing plan, and one of the things that we are actively working on is taking the marketing plan, as if I'm not working on enough, haha. But one of the things that we're working on is taking the marketing plan and coming up with a more detailed tactical plan along with budgets and sequencing in order to bring back to the executive committee for review and approval. Because again, we do have a budget for the entire year for marketing, but it would be good for transparency and governance and so on to go under the hood a little bit and show some of these campaigns and some of the costs behind them and have a discussion and have an approval. So I've been speaking to them about that. While that's waiting, one of the things that was on their list that you may recall from their presentation was trying, especially right now when we're in this kind of winter lull, when we can't be doing buried work, we can't be rodding, to identify the addresses that we believe we can connect aerially and do a promotion to try and get people that we think are quick wins into the pipeline. So their suggestion is to do a limited time offer for free installation for people who can connect aerially. So we'd market that both in the digital channels, but also identify and do direct mailers to those addresses that we believe we can connect aerially. And yes, of course, we don't know 100%. Waitsfield has to do the scout. In my experience, the vantage point assessment about whether or not someone is 100% aerial or not is pretty darn good. So I have Lucas, the GIS consultant, is able to pull those out to get the addresses. And of course, we'll put disclaimers and so on saying you may be eligible, not you are eligible. I mean, all that good stuff. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like to get approval on is a budget of up to $7,500 to run this promotion. That would be plus the costs of mailing. So that would be $7,500 is 50 people. And we may, depending on the response, we may stop it before then. We may want to extend it, but that's the suggestion. That would give us enough breathing room that we could try it out and see how it works and see what the response is and then decide what we want to do from there, versus anything that requires more extensive financial modeling to figure out if we want to make something like this permanent or offer or have some sort of a permanent policy change around installations.
Seems awful expensive to me. $7,500 divided by 50 is $150 per person.
Yep, that's our installation fee.
Our what?
That's our installation fee that we charge customers. So the promotion is a free installation if you're aerial only.
Okay.
Nancy?
I move that we approve the aerial promotion proposal for $7,500.
Second? Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? All opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, so one abstention. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and then we have Stonecrop Meadows on here. I know you just talked about it yesterday at the governing board, Steve. Is there anything you want to cover here with the executive committee?
Well, I'll do it real quick because I know at least Nancy, I think you didn't attend. So it's a development in Middlebury. It's welcome because it's adding more living housing units. It's happening very, very fast. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be maybe half full by midsummer. And as we discussed in executive session, we won't be ready to connect anybody at that point. It's going to take us longer, perhaps a lot longer. So the way we've left it right now, or that we're leaving it right now, is we're going to help the general contractor create a conduit design that is basically for multi-use. There's going to be 3 carriers serving Stonecrop Meadows. We're one of them. The other one's Consolidated, and the other one is Comcast. And so the objective here is to make sure we can get access to those living units. It'll be after the fact because, as Ellie wisely pointed out, if we're not there to offer service when people move in, opportunity's lost. But certainly it will not be expensive for us to build it out when the time comes and we have something on the other end of the fiber. So I think it's a good proposition, and certainly it's going to be a great opportunity. So we're going to be out a couple hours of design time that we'll share with the general contractor to make sure that it's a multi-tenant infrastructure and it will work properly. And then we'll go on our way. We won't worry about it anymore. When it becomes available, it becomes available.
So would they put in the conduit, Steve, or would we be in
Yes.
conduit with somebody else?
Hold on.
It's funny, usually the microphones cancel that out. Must be a very loud dog.
I haven't had a dog eruption in quite a while. That's going again here. What was I even talking about?
Conduit.
Just-
Who pays?
Conduit. Yeah, the good news is the money that we have to spend in order to be included in the list of providers is some design work only, and all the conduit, everything that needs to be done as far as getting cable from point A to point B is all provided by the builder. So pretty good package for us because the fiber that needs to be pulled in is going to go fast. If it's all buried, but it doesn't matter because it's already in place. So it's a pretty good deal for us.
Okay. So moving on to Section 8 updates. So Steve asked me to add the VCB revolving loan here so that we had a placeholder to talk about it. I don't have too many updates on it. One of the things that came out of the VCBB board meeting on Monday this week is that Christine Hallquist formally asked Fukuda yesterday to form a working group, or I forget what she called it, but something like that, to have a look at a number of things, one of which is affordability, and another one of which is what to do with $8 million in ARPA interest. Because, yes, this revolving loan program was essentially the Fukuda consensus, but the other half of that is that the Fukuda's current opinion, and the VCB is aligned with this, is that until we know what happens with the BEAD program, we don't want to make any decisions, any final decisions. So we are continuing to work through this And one of the things that we're suggesting is that we take regardless of what happens with BEAD and regardless of whether the 8 million or some of the 8 million or none of the 8 million goes into this thing, we keep saying it would be very useful to have a below interest rate loan facility available to CUDs. And so can we please put the time into figuring out what that would look like and how the governance would work and how the loans, I mean, all of that. So we are pushing that conversation forward. So I will leave this on the agenda just so we can keep touching base as to where that stands, which sometimes it'll move fast and sometimes it won't move at all. Okay, updates, other. I don't think I have any other updates. We've had a pretty robust conversation today. I know Steve wants to talk about, do you have any other updates, Steve, before we talk about Finance Committee and other business?
Yeah, it's just, that's it.
Okay. All right, so
Can I
Finance
ask
Committee,
one
other business.
question, Ellie?
Sure, Adam.
Last night, either you or Steve mentioned I think it was some telecom company in Vermont went belly up. Was it a CUD?
No
Okay.
No CUD has gone belly up, thank goodness. And as far as I'm aware, none of them are close to that.
Okay,
It was something. Yeah, like Christine made some comment in the Vacuda board meeting yesterday about this, and apparently it was something they talked about in executive session at VCBB, but we weren't in executive session. We don't know what happened. We don't know who it is. It's, probably one of the small fiber companies up north somewhere.
I would agree.
I don't know any further than that. It's not anything we really need to be worried about. I mean, that is, having said that is one of the other things that's the VCBB board has asked Christine and staff to work with Vacuda on is a recoupment program in the event that CUD did fail or showed signs of failing, which is a wonderful thing and frankly something that I'm surprised they didn't do years ago, especially because statute requires them to have such a policy. So better late than never. I've got some opinions about that, but that's not really for a public meeting. So okay, Finance Committee, Steve.
Yeah, so this is a straw man I'm putting out there. Come on, wake up. All right. So I think not all of you are aware of the Finance Committee anyhow, so just real quick and kind of an inside email exchanges that have kind of gone. I think Jeff originally kicked it off and made a suggestion, and Lynn and Cy and Ellie all seem to think it was a good idea. And so we are just beginning to put together that meeting, which probably, we don't know anything about it, whether it's going to be once a week, once a month, only as needed, all that stuff is going to have to be decided. But there was a question about how to paper it, if you will. What are the rules for of the game? And so we had a number of partial discussions, and one of them was driven by the fact that it has to all be done within the constraints of the open meeting law. And one of those is minutes. Who does the minutes? And, do we want to ask Sharon to do that? How do we proceed with that? And so it was with that I kind of got kicked off on some things that actually a response to an email that Ellie sent out earlier today, I think, about the Financial Committee. So this is my 2 cents, and as I said, it's a straw man, which means it's not. You may look at this and decide it's not viable at all, but at least I'm hoping it will kick off the discussion. So, by way of context, for the last 20 years of my paid career, I used to write telecommunications standards for Telecommunications Industry Association, TIA. They're the standards that we're all operating under in the U.S., and they also get harmonized with IEEE and some other very large organizations. And one of the defining factors of how you write, when you write standards, is it a mandatory standard or is it an advisory standard? And really the distinction between mandatory and advisory is that mandatory standards have the word shall in it, which means this is not an option. This is what you have to do. In advisory, as it sort of sounds, if you use the word should, you never use the word shall. It says this is probably a good idea to do, but not necessarily critical. And when you think about the open meeting law, it's really upside down. So I think what they're saying is there's either an advisory or a non-advisory standard, and non-advisory, which is a terrible term, is our Maple Broadband's executive committee, and so advisory then is more of a should type thing. All right, so we're an advisory. Maple Broadband, our executive committee is non-advisory, and what I'm contemplating for the finance committee is advisory. So this is my pitch. I'm calling the finance committee an advisory committee, which means what kind of underscores that is we don't need quorum, and we hold them in executive session. And why not? You can't make a decision in executive session. So, and we can't, and if we made it a mandatory type group, then how do we reconcile decisions that we make in the finance committee with the decisions that are made in the full-fledged executive session? So my pitch here is that by doing this, we don't necessarily need to take a lot of minutes. So, and the other thing is that what I'm proposing to do is we take those that attend the meeting, whoever they are, one person in that meeting prepares to deliver a report to the executive committee after each finance committee is met. And so we have a means of communication. So the chair reports to the executive committee a finding, and if the finance committee thinks we really need to take out some money from the bank, they can't do it. All they can do is make a recommendation to the quorum body, and that then debate it not in executive session, but also after the diligence has been done about the topic, and then the executive committee makes a decision, approves it, or asks for more information. And then, like I said down here, so, and then the other part that I just wanted to pitch in here, because I wanted to keep it in mind, is we need to early on figure out what we're going to do about repaying WCBT.
We are in public session now, just to
Yeah,
remind you.
I know, I realized it just as I said it, but so that's my pitch, and it's really just a suggestion. I'm hoping that either we try to find some way to adopt this, or that we make progress on what the structure looks like, so that we're compliant with open meeting law.
So is your proposal that we create an advisory finance or a finance committee that has no decision-making authority, so that it's advisory under open meeting law? And then about the being in executive session, we need to make sure that we respect the open meeting law, which may not allow for the entirety of every single meeting to be in executive session.
Yeah, my thought would be that if we follow something like this, that we start the meeting, we call it to order, we maybe get attendance and stuff like that, and then we make the announcements about the executive session, and maybe we could have for the agenda, we might have the topics that are going to be discussed in there, but then the next bullet item right after that would be executive session.
I think it depends what we're talking about, because we could talk about some things that are not actually that confidential, but we don't need to get into that now.
Is there a difference between, and Shannon, maybe you know the answer, I don't, between an advisory committee and an ad hoc committee?
Or the other term I've heard used is a working group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to reserve judgment because I want to flesh it out a little bit. Can I get a copy of that deck that you just presented, Steve?
Sure.
Because yeah, I think you're going on the right track, but I want to make sure that whatever we do passes the sniff test.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to do a little bit of homework and take a look at the rules and see what we can do.
Yeah,
And
that's
Shannon,
great. I think that what my ultimate goal here is to make this productive and not
Mhm.
drag us down with the minutia.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
Yeah.
we have to get Sharon to take these notes, and what the finance committee is going to be talking about, maybe some pretty arcane stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to have somebody knowledgeable to write that stuff down, and correcting the minutes could be, you know, real cumbersome. So I'm just trying to
Well,
find some way where we can really make the progress and not spend a lot of time in the paperwork.
and the rules on minutes are really pretty sparse. So, you know, attendance and actions are really the only things that need to be there. And if you're not taking any actions and you're just making recommendations, then that's real easy. But like I said, I want to research a little bit just to make sure. But on face value, I like most of what I'm seeing there.
so Shannon,
Okay,
Adam,
great.
I tend to agree. But I also wonder though, Shannon, do you think we need a formal legal opinion once you've done, you don't think so?
Probably not.
I mean, the what happens is if we break the rules, it only really matters if someone complains and files a complaint under open meeting law, in which case we then have to fix it, right? This is really just about our governance and you know,
Exactly.
from us as an organization trying to do the legal and moral and ethical thing of complying with the laws as we best understand them.
Right. And
So
especially if there's no action going on and they're just making recommendations to a different body, it's relatively benign.
now the
Okay.
question that I had in my mail this morning is the executive committee members or the people who've expressed interest is Lynn, obviously, who is our treasurer and doesn't matter for this question, but Cy and Jeff and Steve, all of whom are voting members of the executive committee. And if three of them are together in a meeting, does that not make it a meeting of the executive committee that has quorum? Because that was my question, is even for this kickoff meeting, do we need to warn it as a special meeting of the executive committee to talk about the formation of a finance committee? But like, how does that work?
So can I just add on to that, Ellie, to say, is this committee limited to members of the executive committee? Or is this something we should be saying to board members and seeing if there are some board members who would be willing, able, and engaged in becoming part of such kind of so that it's not a committee of the executive committee, it's a committee of, or a working group of, or an ad hoc, whatever it is, of the governing board.
The governing board.
Excellent.
Well,
yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, but regardless, if it winds up the three executive committee members show up, does that make it a meeting of the executive committee? I honestly don't know. Didn't have a chance to look it up, so I figured one of you guys might know off the top of your head.
I would
So
say it does.
Shannon's work will be key on that.
But yeah, yes, it would be. My opinion is that it would become an executive committee meeting if
If
there
there's
was.
a quorum.
Yeah.
If there's three of them, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and just for the record, I'm not going to be very helpful in a finance committee meeting. My interest in pushing this was simply to make sure that we get one, because it seems like there's lots of topics that we need to cover. And so I would gladly just say I won't attend the meetings at all, because I know that that's not, I can't help. So why would I be on it? And then, and so as it stands now, we wouldn't have quorum if with the people that are currently on the list, we're okay.
Right. If you had two, then no problem.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
don't show up, Steve, or then we're violating open meeting law for not having warned.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I really want to make sure that we're doing it because I think it's critical. I think it's really important. But yeah, I'll listen to the report at the on the next executive committee meeting.
So Steve, you're going to send the slide deck to Shannon and he's going to take a closer look. Yes?
Yeah, it's been done already.
Yeah, and I think to Cy's point, maybe what we can do is once we get this thing set up and kind of talk about the purpose and the charter and some of the top priorities, we can raise it at next month's governing board to see if there is anyone on the governing board who's interested to join.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. If it was
I
just
think we
governing,
should.
yeah.
And Shannon, if you want to talk open meeting law, I'm happy to do that with you.
Perfect. I may call on your expertise because you deal with it more than I do.
You
Yeah.
guys are awesome. Can I just say what a great CUD we have?
I agree.
Okay, well, that's the end of the agenda. So our next meeting then is
26.
26th. Thank you. 2 weeks from today. All right. Does anyone have any other business before we adjourn?
Nope.
Out 12 minutes early. Good for us.
Yay, can I
All
move
right.
that we
Everybody.
adjourn?
Thanks, guys.
Nice to
Thanks.
see you.
See ya.